Hello, can you believe we are already halfway through January? As I was preparing for this, I can barely believe that we blinked and we are already on the 15th of January. Can you believe that? I've been fighting my way out of the December tiredness. I'm sure you feel the same. And into the new year, I'm ready to face 2021, considering that there will be new challenges, but also new opportunities. And this has meant a lot of planning. Now, today's session is going to be slightly longer than usual, but it's going to be so worth it. Sorry. I love planning. I really love it. I love it so much that I actually use it as a way to procrastinate and to actually not get anything done. I've got piles of diaries and all sorts of interesting plans and planners, but there's no point in having all of these plans if we can't actually execute on it, right? So as I was reflecting on 2020, and I thought about what went well and what didn't and what worked and what should be scrapped, I realized that I totally overcommitted myself last year. And I know there was lockdown and that maybe caused some issues in terms of achieving some of those goals and plans that I'd set out for myself. But I realized that even if we did not have lockdown, I probably still wouldn't have achieved a lot of those in any case. So honestly, if we think about it, life goes on. And as much as I want to be a new year, be a new person, and all of those good things that go along with New Year's resolutions, it's really hard to commit to a whole bunch of new activities, new habits, and potentially even new hobbies, new friends. So 2021, as I'm planning for this year, I'm scaling down my expectations just a little bit. And I'm capitalizing on the understanding that I always overestimate what I can do in the short term, but I underestimate what I can do in the longer term. And so because of this, I have a few TED Talks that I would like to just recap and share with you some of the key learnings that I've had out of these ones. And they range from the super short term to the super, super long term. So let's have a look. So for the super short-term TED Talk that I want to share with you guys is a TED Talk by Christine Carter, and she explains how we can form new habits by committing to unambitious goals for just 1 minute per day. And she tells how she has become a runner, of all things, by only committing to run for 1 minute per day. Now, this sounds absolutely ridiculous, right? When I first heard it, I was like, wait, but how does this actually make sense? But as I thought about it, it actually really does make sense, because the biggest problem that we have with creating goals and forming habits is the fact that change is really hard, and change is what is required for us to move forward towards a goal. And forming that habit that we need to be able to change consistently to be able to get to that goal can be really hard, and it can be really sucky. Now, she says that our ability to follow through on our best intentions, to get into a new habit like exercise, or to change our behavior in any way, really doesn't actually depend on the reasons we might do it, or on the depth of our convictions, which I think we often think about, that we should do so. It doesn't depend on our understanding of the benefits of our particular behavior, or even on the strength of our willpower. Actually, it depends on our willingness to be bad at our desired behavior. Now, I don't know about you, but I often am not willing to be bad at anything. No, for me to achieve a goal, it needs to be bold and audacious and grand. And actually, this all or nothing mentality just leaves me feeling that maybe I don't have enough energy to have that 30-minute high-intensity interval training session today, or to make sure that I'm only eating greens for the next 5 days. Don't worry, I don't think I would ever be able to commit to only eating greens for 5 days. I would starve. But what she says is, she suggests that instead of having this all or nothing approach that we are so inclined to have, instead what we should be doing is to follow a better than nothing approach. So if we think about running, if I want to be running 30 minutes per day, 5 times per week, and with a little bit of rest in between, sometimes when life is just too busy and I'm tired and things are just overwhelming, I'm not going to get out there for 30 minutes. There's no way, I don't have the energy. But instead, if I say, actually, I can do 1 minute, I can just go walk up and down my garden once a day for 1 minute, then the commitment required to actually get to that point of doing a 1 minute activity is much less than committing to a 30-minute activity, right? So all of this is with the intention to rewire our brains until we actually are able to develop the habit that we need to be able to make that consistent change going forward. So as you then build up this habit, it becomes easier to run for more than 1 minute, or easier than just having one lettuce leaf on your sandwich every day, right? I can totally buy into that. What do you think? Okay, so our next TED Talk is talking a little bit more medium term. And the speaker that I would like to refer to here is John Doerr. And he talks about the concept of OKRs, or objectives and key results. And he talks about why the secret to success is to make sure that you have the right goals in place. So if you're unfamiliar with the concept of OKRs, let's just unpack what this is a little bit. So firstly, the objective is what you want to accomplish. And then secondly, the key result is how you're going to get it done. So it talks about the what and the how of a specific goal. But he also alludes to the fact that we need to be clear on why we do it. And you've heard me speaking a lot about the whole concept of why we do what we do, and why is the purpose or the inspiration behind what we do. And that's the part that will often keep us going when motivation is lacking. Unless you refer back to Christine Carter's talk, in which case motivation is not really relevant. But that is as an aside. So OKRs are not necessarily the same as KPIs, key performance indicators. And I think people often confuse the two. So an OKR is not necessarily there with the intention of incentivizing performance or building it into the bonus structure or anything along those lines. Instead, it's there to make sure that we are aligning with the same vision, whether it's in your personal capacity or whether it's your employees aligning with the business vision, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's just about saying, how do we align with that vision? And he goes on to explain that OKRs, for the objectives and the key results, they each have their own little checklist. And I quite like these checklists. So he says objectives are supposed to be significant, they're action orientated, they are inspiring, and he says they're kind of a vaccine to fuzzy thinking, which I thought was very appropriate considering all of the talks about the COVID vaccine happening at the moment. Whereas good results, or your key results, are specific and time-bound. They're aggressive but realistic. They're measurable and they are verifiable, and those are good key results. Now, you might hear some of these terms being very similar to what we would think of in the smarter or the smart goal setting framework, right? Being specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time-bound. Okay, so it's looking at both how we do it and what we want to do and make sure that they meet those specific checklist criteria. So I want you to think about how you could potentially implement this in both your personal life as well as in your business. How could you help your employees to get on board with this concept? And how can you help them to be consistent with driving their OKRs year on year on year until you get to the point where you have the desired outcome? He shares this case study about how Google used OKRs to help Google Chrome, the Chrome browser, to actually get off the ground properly. The designer had a plan in year one to achieve a certain number of users, and he failed miserably. The second year, he set an even higher target. He still didn't meet it. But by year 3, still having the same OKR, which was to be the best browser, and he had decided that he was going to use the key result being number of users to be able to drive that objective. By year 3, he set a target of 100 million users. He ended up exceeding that significantly to get to 111 million users. Now, all of that in 3 years. I don't know what I would do if I had 111 million users. I think I would be completely overwhelmed. But nonetheless, I think it is a good indication of how well an OKR being met consistently or being targeted consistently year on year can really have a positive result. Our third and final TED Talk that I want to share with you today is talking about the long term. Okay, so like super long term. When I think about long term, I think 5, maybe 10 years at a stretch. But in his talk, Ali Wallach explains that we need to be thinking super long term, like not just 5 or 10 years, like 30, 40, or even 50 years. I can't even fathom that long from now. But I think part of the reason why I have not been able to think along those lines is because I can't actually imagine what life would be like at that point in time. There's far too much uncertainty. And actually, I don't really know where I want to be within 30 to 40 to 50 years. I'm all for having a life plan, but sometimes my life plan doesn't extend past 5 or 10 years. And it's too hard. So I know I'm not the only person that struggles with that type of thinking. So Ali has created this concept of a long path, one word, long path. And he says it's not a once-off exercise or even a plan or an agenda. It's more than that. It's a practice because it's not something you can do once and believe that it will be in place forever. No, it addresses how you think about life and situations in general. So he names 3 different modes of thinking. The first one is transgenerational thinking. Now, you might have heard of this concept before, especially as it relates to climate change. I hear about that a lot, right? And we say, like, how are we changing the world for the better for our children and for their children and for their children, right? It's about, and he gives this example about being in a restaurant with your kids, and actually you just want a quiet time with your spouse, and the kids are going all over, and he could so easily just give them a device and you can give them screen time. But if you think about transgenerational thinking and you step into that mode, you think about what example do I want to set for my kids that will help them to change the way that they raise their kids and their kids and their kids. So maybe in that situation, it's about saying, how can I make the best use of this time that we have to be fully present, to engage in meaningful conversations, to give them something to draw instead of to be looking at a screen, right? Then the second type of thinking that he talks about is futures thinking, not future thinking, futures thinking. So this is looking at all the possible solutions to a problem and not only looking at, for example, what the latest technological developments would be that would help us to come to a solution. Because just because everything is driven by technology at the moment and we're in tech evolution, it doesn't mean that we should exclude things like moral ethics and the moral evolution that is required for certain solutions as well, right? So it's to start thinking of more than just one eventuality and different dimensions to a problem that comes along your path. And then the third one is called telos thinking. Now, this is a Greek word, and it's about what is the ultimate purpose or the ultimate aim. Okay, so it's about asking the question, to what end are we doing this? Or how far will I go to make this happen? And that is where you start stepping into the 30, 50, or 100-year vision or goal. And this is where the challenge really comes in, right? How can you make the actions that you take, the behaviors that you implement, the things that you teach your kids and the people around you to count beyond just your life? Is that going to be a hashtag challenge accepted moment for you? I really want to encourage you to think about that. Okay, so there are a lot of practical as well as philosophical concepts in today's talk. But I think it's good for us to have perspective, a bigger perspective than just the current lockdown or what the next pandemic might be, or whatever storm it is that you are facing at the moment. It's about doing both little things, 1 minute at a time, and big things, thinking 50 years down the line, 100 years down the line. But ultimately, it's about knowing where you're going and how you can get there. But I know this process is hard. It's so hard. And sometimes it's really hard to actually just get to the point where we can be really practical with our plans. I want to encourage you to check out our goal setting package that we are making available during the month of January. And maybe a little bit beyond, we'll see how we go. And this really has some actionable worksheets, some resources, and a whole lot more that will help you to get to the point where you can set your best possible goals and work towards the future that you want to create. Plus, there are a limited number of coupons that that are available that will give you 50 Rand off. So make sure that you check those out. And this can be a really great option to work through with your employees at the same time. So do make sure you check it out. The link is in the comments below. And that concludes an epic session on goal setting. And I hope you're feeling equipped. So until next week, when we chat more about some of the concepts we referred to on the 1st of January, this is Christine Tarup signing out. Bye.